You wake up. Your head hurts. Your throat is really parched. You're muddy, dirty, wet. You're really uncomfortable. You've been sleeping in a chair, which is strange because there's an empty bed to the left of you. As you get up, you stumble. You realize that you've actually been sleeping in a sleeping bag unawares. So you peel it off, gather your belongings, and open the door into a hallway. This hallway has a row of doors, all numbered, and disgustingly, the entire carpeting in this hallway is just caked with dried mud. So you make your way across the mud, follow this trail out to the main entrance of this building, and open up the door into the early morning light. Here you see a trail of muddy footsteps. You'd estimate they're about size 16, size 17. They belong to a very large person. And beyond that, there's this muddy pool of water. Then it gets a little weirder. You start noticing all these little multicolored specks of rubber or plastic. You can't really tell what it is. There's this long cardboard cylinder lying on the ground as well. And to the west, you see what at first appears to be a gigantic white ribbon trailing off into the distance. Upon closer inspection, this is a paper towel roll which has been unspooled, and someone has taken it down the street, weaved around various street posts, parked cars, and eventually ending abruptly outside of a building on the university campus. You go to try the door. It's locked. It's still early morning. And as you go the second time, reach forward thinking you'll give it a big yank to get in, you remember. So probably a lot of you here attended a certain university, which is going to remain unnamed for this story, in the GTA, and know about a certain science-related building which has a really fantastic after-hours access to a rooftop for a great view of the city, if you know what you're doing. You got to break open a door, take an elevator up to a janitor's office, go out a window, but it's good for romantic dates or if you're very drunk with a couple of your friends. Very drunk with a couple of my friends, I broke into this building one night. We came prepared. We came armed. My friend had just finished work on his slingshot that he'd been building. So with a big plastic bag of water balloons, multicolored water balloons, we broke in the building, went up the elevator through the janitor's room, and as one friend went out the window and around to open the hatch to the roof, the two other of us, started to fill up the balloons with water. They're small, medium, large, extra large, novelty, oversized balloons. And we went out on the rooftop for a night of target practice. We targeted stop signs, billboards, windows, parked cars. There weren't really any pedestrians that late at night, but we were careful. We weren't that stupid. Eventually, we got down to the end of our supplies, and we were left with this atom bomb of a water balloon, this sort of novelty, oversized balloon, which we obviously won't work with the slingshot, and we're not just going to tip it over the side of the building. So we proceeded back in the building, back downstairs. Along the way, I think it would be a really funny idea to steal the industrial-sized roll of paper towel that the janitor has stored there. So as we proceed out the building, I start unspooling it, running back and forth across the street, wrapping around stop signs, parked cars, etc. Now, as my spool of paper towels starts to run down, my one friend with the slingshot professes fatigue, I think the early stages of the next day's hangover, and goes off to bed. This leaves me with my friend Nye, well, that's what I'm going to call him anyway, him carrying the giant water balloon and us in a heated conversation about what to do with it. Thoughts of going back into residence and waking up our res fellow with a giant water balloon cross our minds. We decide against that. Some other prank ideas fall through, and eventually we settle on what's better for a giant bomb than a moving target. So out on the street, we get out to an area just on a side street by the dorm where thankfully there are a few burnt out light posts. So it's actually relatively dark, and we can hide ourselves by a pole and wait for a car to come along driving. So we wait, and it's whatever, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. So cars don't come along that often. But eventually one comes along, and just as Nye's about to throw it, I shout, "Stop, wait." "What is it?" "That's a taxi, man." "Yeah, and?" "That's like city property or something. Don't they get issued by licenses by the city?" Like, "Yeah, and?" "Man, I'm not messing with the government." I don't think it works that way, Jeremy. So we argue this out, but eventually we reach a compromise. Nye still got the balloon, which I should point out at this point of the story that it does make him the actual person who did this. I'm just the accessory to the crime. But we agree Nye's going to stand with the balloon in the dark there by the light pole, and I'll take a few paces forward, and I'll be the spotter. And my sole responsibility is to identify a car that's not a taxi, and this will be our target. So I stand there through the sort of alcohol-fueled haze. I'm focusing. No taxi, no taxi. First car comes along. It's a taxi. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. What else is going to be driving? So I stay silent. It goes by. Nye doesn't do anything. Second car, same thing. It's a taxi. No dice. Third car comes along. No taxi. No taxi. Oh, that's not a taxi. Do it. I shout. I turn back. I see the splash of this giant water balloon on the windshield of the car. And then this question about what other cars would be driving around at 4 o'clock in the morning comes to me. Nye shouts, "Oh, fuck, it's a cop," and starts booking it back to the residence. He's charging. I'm milliseconds behind him. He jumps over the puddle of water, which I slide through, leaving a trail of giant muddy footprints to the residence building. As we get there, Nye shakingly sticks his key in the door, unlocks it, pulls it open. We get inside, slam the door behind us. As we're running, getting into his dorm room, we can hear the banging and the shouting on the door. We get in the room, shut the door, and we wait. We hear the banging, the shouting, but miracle of miracles, nobody comes to open it. The only reason I can think of for this, based on my own experiences in residence, is that there are enough times when there are drunken, stupid males banging on doors at 4 o'clock in the morning that you really don't want to be the person to answer that door. So he eventually goes away, but we're still a little concerned about all the evidence we've left behind. So I do what amounts to a quarter-ass job. I go into the hallway. I actually find another industrial-sized roll of paper towel in the washroom. I proceed to start wiping down all of the muddy footprints we've left in the hall. And then realizing that there's still, a muddy trail, I actually put my shoes back on, march down to the other end of the hallway, leaving a muddy trail in the other direction, wipe that down, and satisfied with a job well done, I go back to the room. Nye's pulled out a sleeping bag for me. He's already snoring. And as I crawl into the bag, still wearing my dirty, muddy clothes, I start focusing, trying to, recreate everything that happened that night. But the burst of adrenaline is dying off. The alcohol is taking over, and I pass out. The next morning, I wake up. My head hurts. My throat is really sore. Thanks.